Hey, it's Rebecca, and you're listening to Resilient by Design. Today, I am bringing back a great episode all about checklists. I'm going to walk you through the checklist that I have used and developed inside my interior design firm that has really helped move the needle, elevate my professionalism, and make us deliver better results for our clients. I strongly believe that once you establish a process, you need systems in your business to ensure you follow the steps that you've created. This is something that I dive into in depth inside Power of Process. In fact, I share the checklist that I use in my business inside the course. But for those of you who are ready to just dive in to start creating some repeatable systems, this episode's for you. I share the exact checklists that are the most impactful inside my business. This episode originally aired in September. We're bringing it back because I think it's a really good one. Enjoy. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Hey, it's Rebecca, and you're listening to Resilient by Design. Today, I'm diving into all things checklists. You guys know I love organization. I'm all about systems and process. And I have to say that checklists have been a game changer in my business. And specifically, they have kept me on task and they've kept me following my process. They've also helped me to hire and grow a team, because when you have a checklist, that is your SOP, your standard operating procedure. There are multiple checklists and different types of checklists that you can have in a design business. And so today I just want to talk about the 3 most important types of checklists that you need to run your interior design business. So let's go. I'm not going to dangle the carrot. I'm going to tell you them right off the bat what the 3 are, and then I'm going to walk you through in more detail each one. So you guys already know that I follow a 7-step process. I have now for a few years, and that process was truly what was the game changer in my business, because the reality is, I knew how to design, right? I had a good eye for design. And if you can relate to this, then you're listening to the right episode, because this is going to seriously help you in your business. But have you ever had that frustrated feeling where you're like, oh my gosh, I know what I'm doing. I know how to design. I know how to pick paint colors. I'm definitely talented. I've got a good eye, right? Maybe you even went to design school, but you're unsure of the best way to deliver the results for your clients. And you feel chaotic every day. You probably feel like you're winging it sometimes because you were never taught the ins and outs of running a design business. And you're likely wishing that someone could just give you a blueprint because you know there's got to be a better way. This was me for so many years. I remember I was working for another designer even at the time, and just being in his studio, and I have this visual, I'm closing my eyes right now, remembering this time where I was standing with this big table for sourcing and putting everything out, and standing there and just feeling like I was pulled in multiple directions. I didn't know what to do next. And I remember just thinking, what the fuck? How are other people doing this? There's got to be another freaking way. There's got to be a better way, because I don't have a way. I'm just winging it and getting fabrics and thinking on the spot of what I need to do next. When I went out on my own and I started to build out a process and I started to create checklists, I realized that was the missing piece of the puzzle. I needed that blueprint. And so today, I'm not going to give you the whole blueprint today, because that's a whole course. It's called Power of Process. But I am going to give you those tangible, specific checklists that have made a big difference for me in my business, so that you can start thinking about creating some for yourself. Okay, here are the 3 checklists that I believe are the most important types to have in your interior design business. The first one, internal design process. The second is site visits, checklists for site visits like trade day, kickoff, client walkthroughs. And then the third are design checklists. I want to make the distinction between a checklist and a to-do list. People probably go to site with a checklist that they've created, like, here's what I need to do on site. And that's really important to do because each project is unique, but that is not the same thing as a checklist. So a checklist are the tasks that you do repeatedly with every project, regardless. So when you go to do a review of the plumbing rough-in, you're always going to measure certain things. You have your checklist, and then the to-do list will be something specific related to that project. The checklist is kind of like the baseline. You want to have your checklist that you can just print, pull up on your iPad or your phone so that you have it, but then you want to make sure that you obviously supplement that with anything that is project specific. I'm going to walk through each one of these because I know there's 2 design types and that sounds confusing. And so let me walk through specifically the difference. Okay, so let's start with number 1, internal design process. Internal design process is different from design checklists. Design checklists I'm going to get to in a minute, but that is creating the actual design. Those ones will come pretty easily to you if you already are skilled, especially, skilled at design, or you have experience, or you went to school. Like that one that's why I saved that for the end, because that one's maybe a little bit easier. But let's tackle one of the more challenging ones, which is the internal design process. Once you establish a process, you have certain steps that you follow from 1 to, I do 7, you could do 15, 10, 5, 3, whatever you want to do for the service offering that you have. Once you have a process, you need to document that process so that you remember every step that needs to happen inside each step of your process. So we have checklists that relate to each step in our process. I've already shared one of those for all of you for free. If you haven't picked it up already, you can get it. It's my consultation checklist. That is a step in my process. You can get it at RebeccaHay.com/consultation. That is a great example of an internal design process checklist. When you have a checklist that says, essentially, here's what you need to do to prepare for this step. Here's what you need to do at the event or during that step. And here's what you need to do once it's complete. That's your standard operating procedure. That's what I talk about in Power of Process. That's what I share and teach inside my program. This is how businesses are run. This is how big companies are profitable because they're repeating themselves with every client the same way. They're doing the same steps over and over again. They're not reinventing the wheel. You need an internal design process. Ours are literally checklists. There's a checklist, how to prepare for consultation, then what to do and say at the consultation, then what to do after the consultation. We have checklists like that for each step in our process. So that is the very first checklist that I believe. In fact, I believe that's the most powerful one. It's not something that your client sees. It is what keeps you organized internally and allows you to hire someone else to help you. How many times have you wanted to hire someone, or maybe you've hired somebody, but the whole time you're thinking, oh my God, I should just do it, right? Like, I'll just do it faster. Like, I still to this day do that sometimes. Like crazy. Like almost 10 years later of running my design business, there are times where I'm like, I'm just, don't worry about it. I'm just going to do it because it feels like it's in my head. By the time I explain what's in my head to the person, I could have done the task myself. And so, though I do not advise that you do that, those are the times where I catch myself. I'm like, Rebecca, no, that's not how you run a business. You have to delegate and you have to understand that if they do the job at 80% of how you do it, that's a win. If you have a checklist, though, you can give that to your junior designer, to your design assistant, and say, can you help me prepare for the consultation? Here's the checklist. Can you make sure everything is in the bag? Can you print all the things that are in here? Can you go through the checklist? And if there's something here you don't know how to do, raise your hand. It's a game changer for onboarding employees, onboarding freelancers and independent contractors. Have internal design checklists. And if you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I need those things, but I don't have the time to do it or the desire, let's be honest, it's very time consuming and you got a lot going on, then you can also buy them, right? So if you take power of process, it's actually something I don't even think I've ever talked about inside this podcast. But when you take power of process, there is actually an online shop. It's a template shop where I share and sell all my checklists. I share my design services agreement, my contract. I share Canva templates on presentations. Like I share everything. I sell it, but it's only accessible to the power of process students. So that's why maybe I don't talk about it a lot in public, because it's not available to the public. And the reason I did that is because I felt so strongly that you can go to someone's website and download a template and download a checklist or what have you. But if you don't have the context of how to best use that, then it's not going to work for you. And for me, I want my students to get results. I want designers to have success implementing process in their business. I want my students to make money from their business. And so I felt very strongly that I want that shop to just be available to the power of process students. Now, will I change that down the road? Maybe, possibly. It's certainly not a get rich quick scheme by limiting who can purchase those things, but I really care about the results. So that's why it's there. So if you are like, yes, I want process and I want these checklists, you're welcome to buy mine once you sign up for Power Process. But that is the one and first type of checklist that I think is a non-negotiable, important in your interior design business. The second type of checklist are checklists for site visits. These would be maybe as part of your process within certain steps, but you are doing things like trade day, a kickoff meeting, an electrical walkthrough, a plumbing rough-in. The times you need to go to site, whether for construction or decorating, or even just to meet a client, like consultation, for example, you need to have a checklist so you make sure you don't forget anything. So it's funny because we just had a situation in our studio where my senior, I'm really not going to site much anymore because I've become so hands-off because I have such a strong, great team doing it that I don't have to go to site. But one thing I realized that wasn't happening at these site visits were photos. Photos have not been taken at site. So typically, I'm posting pictures on Instagram, like I'm not there, but my team's there and look at the progress. I've literally had no progress pictures for this one project. And I spoke to my designer and she's like, oh, I never think to take pictures. I'm like, oh yeah, that's fair. It's not on the checklist. I just inherently think to take pictures because I'm like on Instagram and I just have always been a bit of a photo whore. I take pictures all the time. I used to have photo albums and scrapbooks and it just comes naturally to me. But it doesn't come naturally to her. And so a simple thing like take photos of progress and upload to the client Google Drive, that line needed to be added to our site visit checklist. That is also to say that once you create a checklist or you take someone else's and make it your own, that's not ever going to not change. Okay, that was a terrible way of saying that. It's going to change. It's going to live and breathe, just like your process and your business, right? You are going to want to add things as you learn. And in a minute, I'll share an example with the design checklist that we've, had to tweak and add over time. But you're going to be constantly adding, but make sure that you have one to start. So site visits, I think that's really important so that when you go to site, you're making sure you ask all the right questions and you look at all the right things. Because sometimes what happens is we go to site and we kind of get bombarded, right? Trades have questions. Oh, I want to go check that thing out. Oh, there's an issue that pops up. And then before you know it, you've left the house and you haven't taken the photos or measured the height of that wall sconce or whatever it was that you needed to do. Okay, so number 3, the third type of checklist that you need for your interior design business are design checklists. I left these to the end because these are probably the most straightforward to understand and create, but they're also probably the number one thing that people forget to do. I say that because I was like, I have all these process. I've got checklists for process. I've got checklists for these are the steps. Here's what we do on all of our site visits. But when it came to actually designing, I took for granted my knowledge on how to design a kitchen and the things I needed to think about. But then when I would have a junior or even an intern come in, they didn't have the same life experience. And what you're taught in school is great, But then as you learn, you need to add to that knowledge. And so we started to create design checklists so that a junior designer could have it in front of them while they're working in AutoCAD or while they're outsourcing so that they didn't forget something. So here's a story. We were working on a project in Caledon. It's this area outside of Toronto. We had a very high profile client, so we weren't able to shoot it or talk about it, but it was a great project. It's like it never happened. But what happened was a bunch of bathrooms, and we were on site. This was early years of my business. We were on site and I didn't have any checklists. I didn't. So at the time we were on site, we're standing there and the contractor's like, well, your drawings didn't indicate a threshold here for the shower glass on the half wall. I'm like, oh yeah, let me look at the drawings that my assistant did. Oh yeah, I guess they're pretty basic. Okay, Now your drawings didn't indicate blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh my God. And then they said, you didn't pick the material that you want us to supply for the shower threshold and for the niche. We just sort of drawn the niche. And this is obviously, these are rookie mistakes. So anyone more senior listening is like, ugh, rolling their eyes, like, obviously. But these are mistakes that we made. And so I remember leaving, walking out of that house and turning to my assistant and saying, we need to create a checklist. We need to create a checklist of all the things that you need to specify when designing a bathroom. And then we need to create one for when you design a kitchen. And then we need to create one for fill in the blank. Then we need to create them for our CAD drawings. What's on an elevation? Let's create a checklist for our floor plans in CAD. What's on the floor plans? What do we include? What information do we include? I had another situation where I was working for a big builder. I did a sales center for them outside of Toronto. I had done sales centers before, but my CAD drawings had conflicting information. So the one page, I don't remember, I think it was the elevation had, stain wood, natural stain or something like that. It was like beams in the ceiling. I wanted it to have a natural stain. But then on the floor plan, I might be mixing this up, but on another part of the drawing, it actually gave the product that I wanted. Well, didn't the builder or whoever was working for the builder go ahead and stain the beams orange? And I came to say, I was like, what the fuck? This is absolutely not the design intent. This is fucking hideous. And they're like, well, your drawing said use natural stain. And then they pulled out the stain that they had used. They had used a different company and brand, and the color was natural. There was nothing natural about this freaking orange ceiling. And if you go through my portfolio, actually, you may not see it. I've probably taken it off because I was and the sales center won an award, like boggles my mind. Those awards, by the way, design awards. Sorry, I just don't have a lot of, okay, I'm not going to talk about it, but like, you got to wonder sometimes, right? Anyhow, and it was a matter of, it was like, well, we looked at this page of the drawings and it wasn't consistent. And ultimately there was nothing I could do. It was done. They didn't want to spend the money to change it, even though it was not the design intent. And I realized I need to get really clear on where I put certain information on my drawing packages. So these are examples that pertain to design checklists. So one could be sourcing, like sourcing checklist for a kitchen, could be an AutoCAD or drawings checklist or a millwork design or whatever type of work your studio does. But if you can start to build out those checklists and like put the basics on there, because it feels good to check things off, right? When I'm designing a bathroom, faucet, check. Vanity, check, like obviously floor tile. And then we put line items in our design checklist that are for consideration, because obviously not every bathroom is the same. So you might want to put areas that are like additionals or optional, which could be, tile half wall. What's the chair rail or the baseboard? Is the baseboard going to be stone or is it going to be wood or MDF? Like these are the types of things. If you can put them on a checklist, you'll never forget again to source or specify or design it. Okay, so those are the 3 types of checklists that I believe are really beneficial in your design firm. So I'll just recap. We've got the internal design process checklist. Then you've got the checklist for site visits. And then third are the design checklists. If you don't have any of these, don't sweat it. These can take time, but start with one of them. And I do believe that the design process is really powerful to have because it helps you grow. It helps you scale. It helps you have more time because you're not thinking. Like the mental taxation on my brain when I didn't have like checklists or even a process, it was so draining. I'd finish the day thinking, what have I missed? I feel like there's something else I need to do for that project. Shoot, I didn't call that contractor back. It was like winging it on fucking steroids, like crazy bananas. So once you start to get checklists, you could hole punch them, put them into a cute little binder. You've got them in your office. I love paper copies of things. I know it's not super eco-friendly, but like just to have it, when I have something in paper, I'm more likely to achieve it, follow it, look at it. The computer's great, but I like to close my tabs and be organized. So then I forget it even exists. And my final tip that I'm going to leave you with today is checklists are only as good as the people who follow them. I'll repeat that again. Checklists are only as good or useful as the people who follow them, meaning that you can have SOPs, systems, checklists, but if you're not following them or using them, you may as well not have them at all. This is why I like to print things. Put them on a bulletin board, pin them up, pull them out. And as you start to build out these systems and have these checklists, and if you take power of process and you get all of the checklists, what I'm going to encourage you to do is, print them or keep them in a Google Drive folder. But if you have someone working with you, you have to remind them over and 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 over again to pull them out and look at them. Because just because you have it doesn't mean your employee is going to use it regularly. It has to become a habit. So what I would do is every time I would have a design meeting, like once a week we have design meetings for different projects, we sit down for the meeting. I'm like, where's the checklist? I don't want to start the meeting until we have it. Where are we at? I want to make sure we don't miss reviewing any important information. There you have it, it's like a little glimpse into how I run my business. If you are someone that really has been dying for a blueprint or understanding how other designers run their businesses, then you're going to love Power of Process. It is an incredible community of designers who are typically 1 to 2 years into their business. But that said, we've got incredible designers who've been in the business for 20 plus years, and they are in our community giving back, sharing, learning, because things change. The way business has run has changed. And so it's a really dynamic group of individuals. The alumni come back every year because you get lifetime access. So you can learn from them, learn from me, get access to that online shop that I mentioned, and really hone in on what it looks like to run a successful design business. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Don't forget to go check out my free checklist that I have available. There's the consultation checklist I mentioned earlier. You can get that at RebeccaHay.com/consultation. And I have my reveal day kit checklist for you at RebeccaHay.com/reveal. Both of those checklists are an excellent start. Good luck, and I'll see you soon.